Right now, welcome back to the program. Lou and Jackie here, along with a good friend, Michael Jankins. How are you, friend?
I'm doing great.
Good. We're here to talk bankruptcy a little bit, and really today there's a lot of misconceptions surrounding bankruptcy, Michael, and you're here to put those to rest.
Kind of dispel those myths.
Yes.
A lot of people have all kinds of ideas about bankruptcy because they talk to people. They just talk to the wrong people, and so they just think all of these things. And sometimes people avoid even calling me because they're so concerned about all this stuff they've heard that they've just figured, oh, either I can't do this, or I'm going to lose this stuff, or it's going to ruin me forever. So all these things just aren't really true. So we want to clear up the myths so that you won't be fearful of calling either myself or any other bankruptcy attorney.
So let's set the record straight. What are some big questions that people might have, or some misconceptions they have when it comes to bankruptcy?
Well, I think some people still have it in the back of their mind that when they did change the law back in 2005, there are all kinds of things swirling around where people thought, oh gosh, we're not going to be able to file bankruptcy anymore. And they made lots of changes, but the fact is we still file bankruptcy, and we have for the last 11 years or so since they changed the law.
Now let's go back to that year they changed the law. What was the main purpose behind changing that law?
Well, I guess it depends who you talk to. The purpose, at least according to the politicians, was that they thought that there was bankruptcy abuse occurring, and in fact that's what they called the legislation, the Bankruptcy Abuse and Prevention Act, Consumer Act, or something like that. And the percentage of those that had been filing abusive bankruptcies would probably be about the same percentage of people that have been involved in voter fraud, maybe less than 1%. So they basically take the whole system and turn it on its head over an infinitesimal amount of bad things that went on in bankruptcy. And it was pushed by billions of dollars of lobbying money and such. But they thought that more people needed to be in bankruptcy paying back part of their debt in a Chapter 13 versus being able to walk from the debt in a Chapter 7. And it was in theory targeted for higher earnings individuals that filed bankruptcy, and that's a matter of relativity as well as to what higher earnings are. But that was the goal behind the change in the law.
All right, now let's get to the misconceptions.
So people still think, oh, can I still file bankruptcy, or do I have to pay? You might have to pay back some of my debts, and how much of it? Well, you don't have to pay back any of your debt when you file Chapter 7 bankruptcy, at least the general unsecured debt that historically would go away in a bankruptcy. So that if you file Chapter 7 bankruptcy, all the debts that went away 50 years ago are the same debts that are going away today. So it's in that respect, it's all the same. So come on in if you're swimming in debt and need some assistance. So it's still out there and it's alive as ever.
But there are some things that are exempt, as we've learned on the program, like student loans and things
I mean,
like
there's
that.
certain debts that aren't going to go away, but they never were at least in recent times, they weren't going away anyway, such as student loans.
Right.
So those live on, court fines, those live on, and those never went away. Tax debt that you've got that's just recent, which would be the last 3 years, that isn't going to go away, although other tax debt will. But again, these are all debts that never went away. So nothing changed in that respect. So Chapter 7 bankruptcy is alive and well, and you don't have to be fearful of whether or not you're going to have to pay things back.
All right, there's something else we heard too, is that if you file bankruptcy, you're not going to be able to get decent credit either. You heard 7 years, you heard 10 years. Is there any truth to that?
Well, and some people think ever. And again, that's a myth. As far as getting credit after you do bankruptcy, it's readily available, depending upon what kind of credit you want to get. So the credit cards, those are unfortunately going to be way too available, and I wish they would cut back on those, but the credit card companies don't make any money unless people are using them, and even those that file bankruptcy, they want them using them again. So if a person's had credit cards, and that's part of the reason they got in bankruptcy, they're on all the marketing lists, and the likelihood is that shortly after the bankruptcy is over, they're going to be getting invitations for a credit card once again. So there's credit. People that need car loans, once the bankruptcy is over with, There's many car dealerships that have lenders that are willing to provide financing the day the bankruptcy is over. So car loans are available. An excellent way to rebuild credit. You're performing on a loan. Payments are being reported to the credit bureau, so a person's credit score is elevating shortly after they've cleared out all the debts. As a matter of fact, there's some people that actually make referrals to me from car dealerships for people saying, look, that are coming to get a car, and they go, look, your credit's just so bad right now. We can help you, but you probably need to get rid of this in bankruptcy first. When it's over, come back and we can get you a loan. So, you know, that credit's available. And then the most important thing that anybody needs credit for is buying a home. And so, generally speaking right now, I'd say the big lenders, the Wells Fargos, the Bank of Americas, they're looking at about 3 years after a bankruptcy is over where they'll be willing to provide financing to purchase a home. And that's assuming everything else being equal, that you qualify in the first place. So, you know,
don't get into debt again.
And don't have a bad credit. Well, that's okay, but not to have a bad payment history once your bankruptcy is over. So those are quite a bit of different kinds of credit. That's all kinds of credit from my perspective. So it's really not that bad. So you don't have to worry about getting credit again. It's quite available after bankruptcy.
You've been talking about your home, your car, and you've also been talking about the difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. If you're wanting to keep your home, if you're wanting to keep your car and continue to pay those loans, is there one in particular that you need to file, or is that even a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, you can still file Chapter 7 bankruptcy and pay for your home and pay for your car. And so that's a really good question, because a lot of people think, oh, I got to file Chapter 13 because I don't want to lose my home or I don't want to lose my car or both. Well, no, you don't have to file Chapter 13 to do that. That's what Chapter 7 does. If people want to keep their homes, they just keep paying on their home loan. If you want to keep your car, you just keep paying your car loan, and you can get rid of all the other debt. So then you can have an easier time paying your house loan and paying your car loan. So yeah, I mean, no need to have to do Chapter 13 and be paying on all your other debts as well. So that's what some people think, but it's not correct. So Chapter 7 is good. You keep your home, keep your car, and get rid of the unsecured credit card debts and your medical bills.
So which one of those two, a 7 or a 13, is a bigger reset button to push?
Well, I mean, in a Chapter 7, the big upside is that you're in and out of it in 3 months and have the ability then to start to build your credit immediately because you're out of bankruptcy. If you're in a Chapter 13, the common time period for Chapter 13 is 60 months or 5 years, and you're in a bankruptcy proceeding that whole time.
Wow.
Now, unusual, a lot of my clients, while they're in the midst of their Chapter 13, they're making their payments to the court, and they've gotten rid of all the stuff that was on their credit because it's now just reflective as being in a Chapter 13, so it's zeroed out. And we've had clients that while they were in 13, their credit scores went way back up, and midway through, they had surprisingly high credit scores, so that's good too, except the fact is after Chapter 7, you're out in 3 months, and so you're already building up your credit if you've got a loan. So that's going to be your best reset, to do it that way.
Got it.
You don't get a whole bunch of brownie points in the credit world because you were in a Chapter 13. I wish there were more favorable thoughts as to people that went into Chapter 13, but from what I see, there just isn't a whole bunch of extra good stuff that people who do that kind of bankruptcy get for the fact they've done it versus just going Chapter 7 and walking away. If they made more incentive into it in the credit world, I think more people would consider doing it.
Okay. Right. Really quickly, let's touch on one other misconception. If you're married and your spouse files for bankruptcy, do you also have to file? Is it a joint effort when doing this?
No, I mean, as a matter of fact, a lot of people call and say, hey, I need to file bankruptcy. My spouse doesn't want to file. Can I still do it? And the answer is yes. Just because you're married does not mean you have to file bankruptcy if one spouse is doing it. Many people come from second marriages, second relationships, and one person may have no debt, and the other person may have all the debt. So the only purpose of bankruptcy is to get rid of debt, so someone that has none or very little really would have no business being in the bankruptcy at all. And so yes, you can file by yourself.
Since you're married, though, and one is filing for bankruptcy, are both responsible for taking care of the debt? that's involved?
No, I mean, for the most part, when we're looking at credit card debt or bank loans, things like that, you have to have signed the obligation to be responsible for the payment, and you can't become responsible by the mere fact that you're married to the person that was using them. So on the credit card account, you basically had to at least sign the application to get the account, or if the application was signed with your name, if you didn't sign it, you still might be on the hook for it if the other spouse did it in your name. But it's a contractual obligation, so those just stay with the person that applied for them. Now, medical bills is a different story. In Iowa, if with spouses, you're responsible for each other's medical bills. It's kind of a concept called family necessities, as well as those of your children. So, you know, if one person has a $10,000 medical bill, well, you both have it for the most part, and that's about the only instance.
Lots of things to talk about.
I was going to say, but most importantly, you just want to make the call, folks, to get the ball rolling, whether you have misconceptions or not. This gentleman will be able to answer all those questions for you. And Michael, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that? Well,
you can give me a call at 255-1855, and we can answer some questions for you. Otherwise, you can find me on the web at www.iowa-bankruptcylaw.com.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you, sir.
All right, it's 8:51 right now, and we will be right back. You're watching CW Iowa Live in West Des Moines.